What if the person smiling at your dinner table was quietly planning to ruin your marriage? Daniel Harper never thought he would question Linda Brooks, his mother-in-law. She had always been calm, polite, and involved. When his wife, Emily, was hospitalized after collapsing from exhaustion at work, Linda rushed in without hesitation. Emily was a nurse in Seattle, always working long shifts, always putting others first. The doctors said she would recover, but she needed rest. Real rest. That meant weeks in the hospital and then recovery at home. Daniel was scared. He hated seeing his wife pale and weak in a hospital bed. Linda stepped forward like a hero. She packed a suitcase and moved into their house, saying she would handle everything. At first, Daniel felt grateful. He was overwhelmed with hospital visits, insurance calls, and work deadlines. Linda cleaned the kitchen before sunrise. She organized bills. She called doctors. She even arranged meals. She made it look easy. But after a few days, Daniel noticed something strange. She wasn't just helping. She was taking control. She rearranged furniture without asking. She changed the grocery brands Emily liked. She answered Emily's phone when it rang. Daniel tried to ignore it. He told himself she was just worried about her daughter. Still, something felt off. One evening, when Daniel came home from the hospital, Linda was sitting at the dining table with his laptop open. She closed it quickly when she saw him. "Just checking emails," she said lightly. Daniel frowned. He hadn't given her his password. He brushed it aside. Stress makes people suspicious, he thought. The next day, Emily called him from the hospital. Her voice was tired. "Mom said you've been distant," she said softly. Daniel froze. "Distant? I've been here every day." Emily hesitated. "She said you seem distracted. Like something's on your mind." Daniel felt confusion mixed with frustration. Of course something was on his mind. His wife was in the hospital. That night, he asked Linda directly, "Did you tell Emily I've been distant?" Linda looked surprised, then calm. "She's sensitive right now. I'm just protecting her." Protecting her from what? Daniel wondered. Over the next week, small comments piled up. Linda would mention how young marriages often fail under stress. She would remind him how much Emily had sacrificed for him. She would talk about loyalty in a tone that felt heavy. One afternoon, Daniel returned home early and heard Linda on the phone in the living room. "He doesn't know what he wants yet," she whispered. "But I see it." Daniel stood still in the hallway. His heart pounded. Who was she talking about? When he stepped into the room, she ended the call quickly. "Just a friend," she said with a thin smile. That night, Daniel checked his social media and found something shocking. A message request from a stranger accusing him of flirting online. The message included screenshots, fake conversations that looked almost real. His stomach dropped. He had never written those words. Never even spoken to that account. Panic rushed through him. If Emily saw this, it would crush her. He immediately showed Linda, expecting support. Instead, she looked strangely calm. "You need to be careful," she said. "Things like this don't appear out of nowhere." The comment felt like an accusation. Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept replaying every moment. Linda near his laptop. Linda answering Emily's phone. Linda whispering on calls. The next morning, he did something simple but revealing. He checked the recovery email connected to the fake account. The backup phone number ended with digits that looked painfully familiar. They matched Linda's number. His chest tightened. Was she trying to frame him? Was she planting doubt while Emily was too weak to defend him? Daniel didn't want to believe it. But the pattern was clear. Instead of exploding in anger, he stayed quiet. He began watching carefully. He noticed how Linda would gently question Emily during hospital visits. "Are you sure Daniel is happy?" she would ask. He seems tired. She planted seeds. Small ones. Dangerous ones. Emily started asking strange questions. Are you overwhelmed with me? She asked one evening. Daniel held her hand firmly. Never. He saw fear in her eyes. Fear that didn't belong there. That fear didn't come from illness. It came from doubt. And doubt had a source. Daniel realized he couldn't confront Linda without proof. If he accused her and failed, it would destroy everything. So he made a decision. He would set a careful trap. Not to hurt her. Not for revenge. But for clarity. He would create a situation that forced the truth into the open. As he sat alone in the quiet house that night, he felt a mix of sadness and determination. His wife was fighting to heal. The last thing she needed was manipulation. If someone was trying to tear them apart while pretending to help, he would uncover it. Even if that someone was family. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the person who says they are protecting you. And Daniel was about to find out just how far Linda was willing to go. What if the only way to expose the truth was to pretend you were guilty? Daniel did not sleep that night. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every strange look, every careful word Linda had spoken. By morning, he had a plan. It was risky, but it was the only way to prove what he already felt in his gut. If Linda was creating lies about him, she would take the bait. He decided to give her something to twist. The next afternoon, while Linda was in the kitchen, Daniel made sure she could see his phone screen. He typed slowly, making it obvious. He opened a blank email and wrote a fake message as if he were confessing feelings to someone named Sophie. He didn't send it. He left it saved in drafts. Then he walked out of the room casually, leaving his laptop open on the dining table, just like before. He watched from the hallway. Minutes later, Linda stepped toward the laptop. She hesitated only for a second before sitting down. Daniel felt his pulse rise. She began typing. Not slowly. Not carefully. Quickly, like someone who had done this before. Daniel quietly recorded everything on his phone from around the corner. After 10 minutes, she stood up and walked away, her face calm. Daniel returned to the laptop. The draft email was gone. In its place was a sent message, to Emily. His heart dropped for a second, but he stayed steady. He opened the sent folder. The message looked emotional, apologetic, almost like a confession. But it wasn't his writing. The tone was different. The words felt dramatic. Linda had crossed a line. Within an hour, Emily called him from the hospital. Her voice was shaking. Daniel. I just got your email. He closed his eyes. Emily, I didn't send that. Silence filled the line. Mom said she saw you writing it yesterday, Emily whispered. Daniel took a deep breath. Please trust me. I can prove this. He asked Emily to check the email header for the device used to send it. She didn't understand at first, but one of the nurses helped her. The IP address matched their home Wi-Fi, but the device signature showed a different browser than Daniel used. A browser Linda had installed for herself the day she moved in. Emily's breathing changed. Confusion replaced fear. Daniel didn't stop there. He sent Emily the video he had recorded. The clip clearly showed Linda sitting at the laptop, typing. The timestamp matched the sent email exactly. There was no denying it. For the first time, Daniel heard anger in Emily's voice, not at him, but at her mother. That evening, Emily asked Linda directly over the phone, "Did you send that email?" Linda didn't panic. She cried instead. She said she was trying to protect her daughter. She claimed Daniel was drifting away. She said she feared losing Emily to heartbreak. But Emily surprised her. You almost caused it, she said quietly. Daniel sat in the living room when Linda walked in after the call. Her eyes were red, but her expression was different. Not weak. Not sorry. Calculating. You set me up, she said softly. Daniel met her gaze. I needed the truth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy. Finally, Linda sighed. You don't understand what it's like to watch your daughter suffer, she said. Daniel's voice stayed calm. I understand love. And this isn't it. Linda's face hardened. You think you've won? She asked. That sentence stayed with him. Won what? A battle? A game? This was supposed to be family. The next day, Emily demanded her mother leave the house. Linda packed quietly, but before she left, she turned to Daniel. Be careful, she said. Marriage changes people. Daniel didn't respond. He drove straight to the hospital after she left. When he walked into Emily's room, she looked exhausted, but clear. I'm sorry, she whispered. He took her hand. You have nothing to apologize for. Tears filled her eyes. I wanted to believe Mom would never hurt us. Daniel nodded slowly. Sometimes people confuse control with love. They sat in silence for a long time. Something had shifted. Not just between Daniel and Linda, but between Daniel and Emily. The trust had been tested, but it had not broken. Still, Daniel couldn't shake one thought. Linda had said he thought he'd won. That meant she believed there was more to this. And deep down, he feared she wasn't finished. Because people who try to control others rarely walk away quietly. And as Daniel held his wife's hand, he knew one thing for certain, this wasn't the end of the story. What if the truth was only the beginning of a bigger storm? Daniel hoped that once Linda left the house, peace would return. For 2 days, it almost felt normal. He cleaned the living room, removed her suitcases from the hallway, and tried to focus on Emily's recovery. But on the third morning, his phone buzzed with a message that made his chest tighten. It was from his boss. We need to talk. Urgent. Daniel's stomach dropped. He had a bad feeling. At work, the atmosphere felt different. People avoided eye contact. His manager, Mr. Collins, closed the office door and looked at him carefully. Daniel, someone sent an anonymous email to HR, he said slowly. It claims you've been unstable at home. That you might not be fit for leadership. Daniel's mind raced. He didn't need to guess who would do something like that. The email mentioned family drama and hinted at inappropriate behavior. It was vague, but damaging. Daniel felt anger rise, but he forced himself to stay calm. Sir, this is personal, he said. Someone is trying to hurt me. Mr. Collins nodded. We haven't made any decisions. But this is serious. Daniel left the office with his head spinning. Linda wasn't done. She couldn't break his marriage, so now she was targeting his career. He called Emily from the parking lot. She listened quietly, her voice steady but tense. She wouldn't, Emily began, then stopped. Daniel didn't accuse. He simply said, this is her pattern. That evening, they sat together in the hospital room, both silent for a long time. Emily looked torn. She's my mother, she whispered. Daniel nodded. I know. But this has to stop, Emily said, her voice gaining strength. Daniel had already started preparing. He gathered every message Linda had sent him over the past weeks. Every strange comment. Every passive-aggressive text. He even saved voicemails where her tone shifted from sweet to threatening in seconds. He didn't want revenge. He wanted protection. The next twist came faster than expected. A family friend called Emily and said Linda had been telling relatives that Daniel was controlling and manipulative. The story had spread quickly. Whispers move faster than truth. Daniel realized this wasn't random anger. This was damage control. Linda was building a story before they could expose her actions. He met with a lawyer the next day, not to sue, but to understand his rights. The lawyer listened carefully and said one thing that stayed with him: when someone feels they're losing control, they often escalate. That word echoed in Daniel's mind. Escalate. That night, he received a message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet." No name. No explanation. But he knew. Instead of reacting, Daniel saved the message and blocked the number. He refused to play into fear. When Emily was discharged from the hospital a week later, Daniel brought her home to a house that felt different. Quieter. Safer. But tension still lingered in the air. 2 days later, Linda showed up unannounced. She stood on the porch, holding a small box. Emily opened the door while Daniel stayed close behind. Linda looked calm, almost gentle. "I just want to talk," she said softly. Emily hesitated but stepped outside. Daniel watched through the glass. He couldn't hear every word, but he saw the shift in body language. At first, Linda looked emotional. Then defensive. Then cold. Finally, Emily's posture straightened. She handed the box back. Linda's face changed. She looked past Emily and directly at Daniel through the window. That look wasn't sadness. It was warning. When Emily came back inside, her hands were shaking. "She admitted it," she whispered. Daniel's heart pounded. "Admitted what?" "She said she wanted to test you. To see if you were strong enough to fight for me." Daniel felt a mix of anger and disbelief. By destroying everything? Emily nodded slowly. "She said if our marriage survived her pressure, then it was real." Daniel sat down, stunned. This wasn't just manipulation. It was obsession with control. Linda believed she had the right to test their love like it was some kind of experiment. Emily wiped her tears. "I told her she crossed a line she can't uncross." That sentence felt final. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, Daniel received confirmation from HR. The anonymous complaint had been traced. It came from a public computer at a small library near Linda's apartment. There was security footage. Clear enough to recognize her. Mr. Collins apologized and closed the case. Daniel's reputation was safe, for now. But when he told Emily, she didn't look relieved. She looked heartbroken. "Why would she go this far?" she asked quietly. Daniel didn't have an answer. Some people fear losing influence more than losing relationships. That night, as rain tapped against the windows, Daniel sat alone in the living room. The house was finally calm. No tension. No secrets. But he knew something important. Linda had shown exactly who she was when she felt threatened. And people rarely change overnight. As he turned off the lights and walked upstairs, his phone vibrated one more time. A new message. Different number. Only 3 words. "This isn't over." Daniel stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Because deep down, he knew she meant it. What if the final battle wasn't about love, but about letting go? Daniel stared at the message on his phone for a long time. This isn't over. 3 simple words, but heavy with meaning. He didn't show fear. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked upstairs and sat beside Emily on the bed. She looked tired but stronger than before. He handed her the phone. She read the message slowly, then closed her eyes. "I'm done being afraid of her," she said quietly. That night, they made a decision that would change everything. No more silence. No more private conversations. No more secrets. The next morning, Emily called her father, Robert, who had been mostly distant during all the chaos. He lived 2 hours away and preferred staying out of conflict. But this time was different. Emily told him everything. The messages. The lies. The complaint to Daniel's job. There was a long pause on the phone. Then Robert spoke in a low, serious voice. "I'll handle this." 2 days later, Robert arrived in town. He didn't warn Linda. He went straight to her apartment. Daniel stayed home with Emily, waiting. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, Robert called Emily. She put him on speaker. His voice was calm but firm. "It ends today," he said. She admitted sending the messages. She said she felt pushed out. Replaced. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Robert continued. "I told her love isn't a competition. And if she keeps attacking you too, she will lose everyone." The line went silent for a moment. Then Robert added something unexpected. "She agreed to get help." Daniel blinked. "Help?" "Counseling," Robert explained. "She's not well. She doesn't see how far she's gone." Emily held Daniel's hand tightly. This wasn't the dramatic ending they expected. It was something quieter. Something uncertain. A week passed with no new messages. No surprise visits. No rumors spreading. Daniel focused on work. Emily started therapy to process everything. They began couples counseling too, not because they were broken, but because they wanted to be stronger. The tension slowly faded from their home. Then one evening, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Daniel froze for a second before opening it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Linda. The words were simple. No excuses. No blame. She admitted she had acted out of fear. She wrote that watching her daughter build a new life made her feel invisible. She said she confused control with care. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said she was starting therapy and would respect their boundaries. Emily read the letter twice. She didn't cry this time. She looked thoughtful. "I don't know if I can forgive her yet," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "You don't have to. Not now." Forgiveness wasn't the goal. Peace was. Over the next month, life became steady. Daniel received a small promotion at work, a quiet confirmation that his name had been cleared. Emily returned to her job at the design studio. They started cooking dinner together again. Laughing again. Small things felt big. One Sunday afternoon, they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the quiet street. Emily rested her head on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you regret fighting back?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. The stress. The fear. The long nights. "No," he said honestly. "Because we didn't fight her. We fought for us." Emily smiled faintly. But the story wasn't finished yet. A month later, Linda requested a meeting. Not at their house. Not alone. She asked to meet at a public cafe downtown. Emily hesitated but agreed, with Daniel by her side. When they arrived, Linda was already seated, looking smaller somehow. Not weaker, just quieter. There was no tension in her eyes this time. She didn't try to control the conversation. She didn't shift blame. She simply said, "I was wrong." The words felt real. She spoke about her therapy sessions. About realizing she had built her identity around being needed. When Emily grew independent, Linda felt lost. Instead of facing that fear, she tried to pull her daughter back through pressure and drama. Daniel listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He didn't accuse. When Linda finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Emily spoke. "You hurt us deeply," she said calmly. "Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." Linda nodded. "I know." Daniel then said something simple but clear. "We're willing to move forward. But slowly. With boundaries." Linda agreed without argument. That was new. As they left the cafe, Emily squeezed Daniel's hand. "It feels different this time," she whispered. And it did. The chaos had burned itself out. What remained was honesty, fragile but real. Months passed. Linda kept her distance but sent occasional respectful messages. No manipulation. No hidden threats. Just short updates about her progress. Emily responded politely, nothing more. Daniel stayed watchful but no longer anxious. Their marriage, tested by pressure and fear, had grown stronger. They communicated more openly. They protected each other fiercely. One evening, as they prepared for bed, Emily turned to Daniel and said, "If she hadn't pushed so hard, we might never have realized how strong we are." Daniel smiled. Sometimes storms show you what's solid. The house felt peaceful again. Not perfect, but steady. And for the first time in months, when Daniel's phone buzzed late at night, he didn't feel a rush of fear. It was just a work email. Nothing more. He placed the phone on the nightstand and turned off the light. As darkness filled the room, he understood something important. The real trap was never the one he set for Linda. It was the trap of silence and doubt. And they had escaped it together.